Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche will lose his law license after his term is over because he's engaging in flatly unethical behavior. You can't have a fake settlement with fake negotiations with essentially one entity negotiating against itself and then just paying out taxpayer money that Congress never authorized to go to criminals.
Congressman Ted Lieu just brought the ultimate receipt to a knife fight. Right now, in America, you're living in a tale of two completely different realities. In one reality, everyday Americans are getting absolutely crushed. We are talking about families sitting at the kitchen table, looking at their gas bills, looking at their mortgage rates, and wondering how they are going to make it to the end of the month. But in the other reality, the reality of this current administration, the Treasury of the United States is being treated like a personal ATM machine. We are talking about a $1.8 billion paper trail that the administration apparently thought they could quietly slip by the American public. This isn't just a political argument. It's an examination of an administration that is actively ignoring a cost of living emergency to create a massive slush fund for convicted criminals. Before we get to the absolute legal absurdity of how they magically found this $2 billion and why the top lawyer at the IRS just resigned over it, you need to hear exactly how Ted Lieu set the stage. Listen closely to the sheer contrast he paints here.
We have a cost of living emergency in America. Gas prices are skyrocketing, grocery prices are surging, mortgage rates are climbing, and what are Trump and Republicans focused on? A $1 billion taxpayer-funded ballroom, a giant arch in D.C. to honor Trump, and now we learn a nearly $1.8 billion slush fund to pay criminals who are friends of Donald Trump, including January 6 rioters. November is coming.
November is coming. That is not just a slogan, it is a warning. Let's pause and unpack what Lieu just laid out, because the context here is absolutely staggering. Earlier in this exact same press conference, Representative Brendan Boyle laid out the economic reality. Gas prices in some areas surged from under $3 to over $4. $50 a gallon in just 2 months, a 50% increase. 15 million Americans are facing the loss of their health care due to sweeping cuts. And what is the administration's response to this financial ruin? A $1 billion ballroom with a helipad, a giant arch in Washington, D.C. to honor themselves, and, most chillingly, a $1.8 billion slush fund to bail out January 6th insurrectionists. While the public struggles to put food on the table, the executive branch is focused on paying out felons. But how do you just find almost $2 billion in the federal government? You can't just write a check. You need a mechanism. You need a loophole. Stay until the end, because the moment Lieu explains how they engineered this payout is a masterclass in how you expose an official who refuses to follow the Constitution. Hit subscribe, because when the DOJ starts acting like a mob accountant, you need to see the receipts. To understand the sheer audacity of this $1.8 billion slush fund, you have to understand how government spending is supposed to work. According to the U.S. Constitution, Congress holds the power of the purse. The president cannot just snap his fingers and hand out billions of dollars. If he wants money for a project, he has to go to Congress, ask for it, and get it approved. But this administration didn't want to go to Congress because they knew they would never get approval to hand taxpayer money to convicted rioters. So they created a backdoor. They engineered a legal magic trick. Watch Ted Lieu tear the mask off this scheme.
Now, let me tell you a little bit about why this nearly $1.8 billion taxpayer-funded slush fund is completely unethical and totally ridiculous. First of all, it came as a result of a settlement between the IRS and the Department of Justice. Well, it turns out both those agencies are the same entity because they both report to Donald Trump. So it's like settling with yourself. And with these fake negotiations and this fake settlement, magically appears nearly $1.8 billion to pay people who have been convicted of crimes.
Lieu doesn't rely on gotcha questions. He exposes the structural farce as a primary receipt. He points specifically to the black and white rule of government oversight. You cannot have one entity negotiating against itself to authorize payouts. The receipt he's holding is a fake settlement drafted by the administration. Think about the scale of this. Nearly $2 billion. How does a settlement usually work? In the real world, two opposing parties fight in court. They present evidence, they argue, and eventually they reach a compromise to save time and legal fees. It is an adversarial process, but the legal theory here, as Lieu brilliantly exposes it, is based on a twisted version of the unitary executive theory. Because both the IRS and the DOJ report directly to the president, this wasn't an adversarial negotiation. This was a boss telling his left hand to sue his right hand and then deciding that his right hand must pay the left hand $2 billion of your tax money. It's like settling with yourself. That one sentence destroys the entire facade. They didn't win this money in a court of law. They didn't get it approved by Congress. They sat in a room, drafted fake documents, held fake negotiations, and generated a massive payout for the president's political allies. This is how you check the uncheckable, by showing the public that the government is being set up to settle. A multi-billion-dollar payout with its own boss. When you execute a scheme this blatantly illegal, you need lawyers to sign off on it. You need top-tier officials willing to put their names on the dotted line to give the fake settlement a veneer of legitimacy. Enter Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Now, typically, politicians use polite language when criticizing cabinet members. They say things like, "We strongly disagree with the Attorney General's interpretation of the law." That is not what Ted Lieu does here. Lieu doesn't just criticize the policy, he takes direct aim at Todd Blanche's professional survival. Watch this.
People drafting this document know it's unethical. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche will lose his law license after his term is over because he's engaging in flatly unethical behavior. You can't have a fake settlement with fake negotiations with essentially one entity negotiating against itself and then just paying out taxpayer money that Congress never authorized to go to criminals.
Watch how Lieu reacts when the receipts transition from unclear negotiations to actual professional casualties. Todd Blanche will lose his law license. Let that sink in. A sitting congressman, who is a lawyer himself, is looking into the cameras and putting the nation's top law enforcement officer on notice. The argument here is a trap the administration can't escape. Bypassing Congress to authorize a multi-billion-dollar payout isn't just bad policy. It isn't just a political disagreement. It is a disbarment-level offense. Attorneys are bound by a strict code of ethics. You cannot draft fraudulent documents. You cannot engage in sham litigation to defraud the United States Treasury. By publicly declaring this a fake settlement, Lieu is laying the groundwork for a formal ethics complaint with the Bar Association. When an acting attorney general is completely focused on the president's personal slush funds instead of enforcing the law, the mask of law enforcement disappears. Lieu is sending a message to every single lawyer currently working in the DOJ. If you touch this document, if you process this payment, you will not have a career when this administration leaves power. Of course, Trump's defenders will immediately hit back. They will go on cable news and claim that this is just a standard bureaucratic transfer of funds. They will say Ted Lieu is just playing partisan politics. But Lieu has one final receipt. And this isn't an opinion. This is a cold, hard, devastating fact. In any massive financial scandal, you always look for the people who refuse to play along. You look for the people who jump off the ship before it sinks. Listen to what happened inside the IRS when they were ordered to execute this $1.8 billion fake settlement.
At the same time, our committees are going to do the work of what committees have always done in the past, which is oversight. So today, Ranking Member Raskin on House Judiciary is making a request for subpoenas to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and to other people that worked on this slush fund document. This $1.8 billion slush fund is so unethical that the General Counsel of the IRS resigned because of it. So we want Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche to come in right now and answer questions. If Republicans don't go along with that, we're going to get the gavels, as the chairman said, next term, and we will get Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche in if he lasts that long.
The ultimate receipt here is a massive internal resignation. The General Counsel of the IRS resigned because of it. Stop right there. The General Counsel is the top lawyer for the entire Internal Revenue Service. This is not a low-level staffer. This is a career legal expert whose entire job is to ensure the agency operates within bounds of federal tax law. Lawyers at that level do not resign over minor policy disagreements. They don't throw away their prestigious careers because of a scheduling conflict. They resign when they're asked to do something illegal. They resign when they look at a document, realize it's a crime, and say, I am not going to prison for you. If this deal is so perfectly legal, like the administration claims, why did the top lawyer at the nation's tax agency walk away? This is why the powerful fight transparency. It isn't about pending litigation or standard settlements. It's because sunlight is the best disinfectant. When Lieu tells the press that Jamie Raskin and the Judiciary Committee are preparing subpoenas, he's reclaiming the rule of law over an administration that treats taxpayer money as a private shield. They're giving Blanche a choice. Come to Congress and testify under oath about this fake settlement, or face the full wrath of congressional subpoenas when Democrats take the gavel in November. The principle here is painfully simple. Accountability dies in the shadows of deals made in private. Look at what we've uncovered in just one press conference. We have a government that tells its citizens to just deal with it when gas prices hit nearly $5 a gallon. We have an administration that slashes health care for 15 million people to save money. But when it comes to a $1 billion taxpayer-funded ballroom, the money is there. When it comes to a $1.8 billion slush fund for convicted January 6 rioters and political cronies, they literally invent a fake settlement, sue themselves, force out their top lawyers, and magically conjure the money out of thin air. The government is currently privatizing justice for the elite. They are weaponizing the DOJ and the IRS not to serve the public, but to rob them. And men like Ted Lieu and Jamie Raskin are standing at the gates, holding the receipts, and letting them know that the bill is coming due. Now, I want to turn it over to you. Drop a comment below. Should a president be allowed to legally work it out with himself to settle a $1.8 billion payout against his own government? And after hearing about the fake negotiations and the resignation of the IRS General Counsel, do you think Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche should lose his law license over this? Let's name the names of those who put the deal over the Constitution. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update when we bring the receipts. Accountability is coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
On November 9th, 2024, just 32 days after your last public comment saying that women absolutely should not be in combat, you declared that, quote, some of our greatest warriors are women, and you support having them serve in combat. Now, that is a very, very big about face in a very, very short period of time. So help me understand, Mr. Hegseth, what extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013, because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards? That they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Senator, the concerns I have and the concerns that many have had, especially in ground combat units, is that in pursuit of certain percentages or quotas, standards have been changed. And that makes the combat more difficult for everybody involved.
Let me make a suggestion about what happened in that 32 days. You got a nomination from President Trump. Now, I've heard of deathbed conversions, but this is the first time I've heard of a nomination conversion.
32 days. Remember that number? Not 3 years, not a decade to mature and evolve. 32 days. Watch how Mr. Hegseth reacts when he's backed into a corner by that number. Nomination conversion. With just those 2 words, Elizabeth Warren has nailed the opportunistic face of the Secretary of Defense nominee. What we just witnessed was one of the most ruthless unmaskings on the floor of the U.S. Senate. The issue here isn't just about conservative or progressive views. It's about the integrity of the man who will hold the power of life and death over the world's most powerful military. Senator Elizabeth Warren wasted no time on pleasantries. She went straight to the heart of the crisis of confidence named Pete Hegseth. On one side, a veteran senator with a mountain of documented receipts. On the other, a nominee attempting to whitewash 12 years of ideology in less than a single month. Why would a man who spent his entire career insisting women erode the military suddenly praise them as great warriors, right after a phone call from Donald Trump? We're going to analyze Warren's entrapment tactics and how Hegseth fell into the deep hole of his own hypocrisy.
So going back to January 2013, you told a Fox News interviewer that women in the military simply couldn't measure up to men in the military, saying that allowing women to serve in combat roles would force the military to lower the bar. You picked up on that same theme in 2015, making remarks on Fox News, referring to women in combat as, quote, it would erode standards. June 2024, you said on Ben Shapiro's podcast, quote, women shouldn't be in combat at all. And then, of course, we've talked about it in 2024. You published a book, and you say on page 26 of your book, we need moms, but not in the military, especially in combat units. Page 48 of your book, you claim that women should not be in combat roles because men are distracted by women. And then 10 weeks ago, you appeared on the Sean Ryan show and said, I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. Now, I presume you recall making all these statements?
In the art of legislative questioning, the written word is a cold, indisputable weapon. Warren applied the tactic of shrinking the political space. She refused to cite anonymous sources or articles that could be dismissed as fake news. By citing exact page numbers from Hegseth's own book and public recordings, she stripped the nominee of his privilege of ambiguity. Page 26 and page 48. In a legal sense, a podcast interview can be blamed on context being cut. But a book, you had to write it, send it to an editor, read the proofs, correct the errors, and sign off on its publication. That is the highest level of intentional thought. Hegseth cannot say you misunderstood me when his reason for banning women wasn't about physical fitness, but because men supposedly can't control their distractions. Warren built a brick wall around him, narrowing a 12-year timeline down to a mere 10 weeks. This wasn't a request for information. It was a legal confirmation to strip away all exits. Hegseth walked into a room with no windows. When a politician ties themselves to absolutes in the past, they are planting a time bomb under their own future seat of power.
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013 because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards that they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Sounds reasonable, right? I only care about military standards. I don't hate women. If Warren had stopped there, Hegseth might have survived, but a veteran politician never lets the opponent seize control of the narrative framework. Watch how Warren smashes this standards lifeline. Razor sharp. I don't see the word standards anywhere. Warren exposed the true nature of Hegseth's argument. In the past, he used the phrase straight up, meaning an absolute prohibition based on biological traits, gender, not a test of merit or ability. Hegseth tried to borrow the camouflage of military expertise, but Warren ripped it off to reveal the naked truth. He only changed his tune because the stage had a new owner.
I'm incredibly grateful for the 2 women who've served our military in uniform, and including in the Central Intelligence Agency, contributions on the battlefield, indispensable contributions. Senator, I would like to clarify, when I'm talking about that issue, it's not about the capabilities of men and women, it's about standards. And this committee has talked a lot about standards. Standards that we, unfortunately, over time, have seen eroded in certain duty positions, certain schools, certain places, which affects readiness, which is what I care about the most, readiness on the battlefield.
I appreciate that.
And so my comments point time and time again to standards. I'd say I would be honored to have the opportunity to serve alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, men and women, black, white, all backgrounds, with a shared purpose. Our differences are not what define us. Our unity and our shared purpose is what define us, and you will be treated fairly and with dignity, honor, and respect, just like every man and woman in uniform, just like the men and women that I've worked with in my veterans organizations, to include when I was a headquarters and headquarters company commander in the Minnesota National Guard.
Well, I appreciate your 11th hour conversion.
And I would point out, I have never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed inside infantry training units, ranger school, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Commanders meet quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women
Commanders
who are
do not have to
capable
meet
of meeting
quotas
that
for the
standard.
infantry. Commanders.
Written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk to you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about, because it's not
think about it
one
right
that,
now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the
Oh,
president
I'll
is.
bet you would.
From an institutional governance perspective, this is the moment the nominee loses his authority. Warren set up a test of leadership by example. For years, Hegseth branded himself as a Pentagon reformer, demanding that generals stay away from the revolving door of the arms industry. Yet, when asked to make the same commitment, he shirked responsibility with a formalistic argument. I am not a general. For the Senate, a person about to hold the highest command who believes they stand above the moral rules they impose on subordinates is a structural failure. This double standard undermines military discipline at its core. Senate hearings always act as a magnifying glass. What we saw today wasn't just a few gaffes. It was the fragility of a cabinet nominee's moral foundation. Senator Warren's brilliant argument proved an institutional truth. When an individual's core beliefs are merely a currency to be traded for confirmation, national security becomes a gamble. If Hegseth can discard 12 years of conviction in just 32 days, the Pentagon has no guarantee he won't continue to bend security principles according to the political winds of the future. Please hit like and follow the channel to continue diving deep into the strategic movements in Washington. What do you think about the future of this nomination after today's hearing? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching.